The Duke of Sussex is heading back to the United Kingdom, not out of choice, but because circumstances leave him no other option. This isn't some heartfelt family reunion. It's the result of official procedures now taking their course. The royal household has confirmed his return, but made it clear: no special privileges, no royal protection, and definitely no political backing this time around. His move from the United States wasn't exactly what everyone expected. An official statement from Buckingham Palace dropped at 8 a.m. GMT on January 28, 2026, and it hit like a thunderclap. The tone was cold, formal, and brutally direct. According to the announcement, Prince Harry will be returning to Britain after facing immigration issues in the US, leaving him without his former advantages or legal standing. The message spread across international headlines within minutes. What had been whispered in tabloids for months finally became official fact, and this time, the palace didn't sugarcoat a single word. Unlike past family dramas hidden behind royal protocol, this statement was sharp, structured, and emotionally detached, almost like a military report. Now, Prince Harry faces a moment unlike any other, coming back to the UK not as a royal figure, but as someone under immense public scrutiny. The entire controversy revolves around the cancellation of his O1 visa, a prestigious US immigration status given only to individuals with exceptional skill in arts, science, sports, or business. For almost 6 years, Harry built his new life around that visa, creating an identity far from the palace walls. And now, that very foundation has crumbled. He had become a media figure, a mental health advocate, and even a commercial brand. But by the end of 2025, everything started to unravel. Behind closed doors, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security quietly opened an inquiry after several congressional requests about possible misuse of special visa programs. And the surprising spark: Prince Harry's own words. In his 2023 memoir, Spare, Harry openly discussed experimenting with substances like cocaine, mushrooms, and cannabis, stories that stretched from his teenage years to adulthood. Back then, his openness was praised as raw and healing, showing honesty about personal struggles. But to immigration officials, those same admissions read more like self-incrimination, and that changed everything. Under U.S. immigration law, anyone who publicly admits to breaking controlled substance regulations could be considered ineligible to remain in the country, even without a conviction. And for elite O1 visa holders, the standards are even tougher. They must show continuous compliance with U.S. law, maintain proof of exceptional work, and have a verified sponsor within the country at all times. By late November 2025, every one of those conditions had fallen apart. Netflix had cut business ties, Spotify was locked in a contract dispute, and Meghan's talent agency, WME, chose not to renew their joint representation deal. Their production company, Archwell, was left hanging in uncertainty. Worst of all, not a single verified organization was willing to step forward and sponsor Harry's visa renewal, leaving him completely stranded in a system that once embraced him. His immigration situation completely fell apart. By January 10, 2026, the Department of Homeland Security delivered a formal notice to appear, the kind of document that means it's time to leave or face official proceedings. He was given 10 business days to exit the U.S. voluntarily or risk a full legal process. Appeals were made, political favors were called in, emergency filings were attempted, but nothing worked. And just after midnight on January 26th, Prince Harry quietly boarded a British Airways flight back to London under official escort. It was a moment heavy with symbolism. The same man who once walked behind his mother's coffin under heavy protection was now treated like any other traveler, seated in 2A on flight BA268 from Los Angeles to Heathrow. His exit wasn't just a legal matter. It was a logistical collapse. Their once glamorous Montecito mansion, once seen as a private haven, had turned into a financial burden. According to verified court records first revealed by the Los Angeles Times, Harry and Meghan had missed 2 consecutive mortgage payments to First Republic Bank, now part of J.P. Morgan Chase. The $14.65 million property, bought with a $9.5 million loan back in 2020, was officially moved into pre-foreclosure status on January 8, 2026, with no steady U.S. income, no corporate sponsors, and multiple financial obligations reportedly stacking up, including around $3.6 million owed for private security and transportation services. The Duke had run out of time, funds, and leverage. Attempts to switch his O1 visa to a temporary B2 visitor visa were denied by officials, who cited unresolved eligibility issues and major financial instability. Any hope of relocating to Canada was quickly shut down under joint visa security agreements. No country in the European Union offered private residency, and those wild media rumors about escaping to Botswana, Argentina, or some hidden island in the Pacific, pure fiction. In the end, there was only one destination left: home. But this isn't being painted as a warm homecoming. It's being managed like a controlled re-entry. Official sources describe it as part of Operation Irongate, a confidential security protocol said to be coordinated by Prince William and endorsed by Princess Anne. Under this plan, Prince Harry will be processed at Heathrow Airport just like any other traveler with restricted status. No VIP lounge, no royal shortcuts, and no palace vehicles waiting outside. Insiders from the Home Office revealed that the lease on Frogmore Cottage was officially terminated on January 15th, and all of Harry's previous security authorizations have been revoked. His arrival in Britain will now be handled under standard border procedures, with no special privileges or protection. He's considered an independent private citizen, separate from official royal operations. It's a chilling twist of fate. The same man who once stood as a global symbol of freedom and reinvention now returns under strict watch, detached from the very system that once defined him. And the most bitter part, the memoir that was meant to set him free, Spare, ended up being the very piece that exposed his greatest vulnerabilities. What the world saw as a deeply personal memoir, a raw and emotional look at a royal breaking free, quietly took on a very different meaning in Washington. Behind closed doors, Spare wasn't just viewed as a story of vulnerability. It was treated as a legal statement with serious consequences. When the book hit shelves in January 2023, it made headlines for its shocking honesty. Harry openly discussed experimenting with substances as a teen, including moments at Kensington Palace and later in California, where he described vivid experiences involving altered perception, even a bizarre vision of a talking toilet. To readers, it sounded wild, even eye-opening. But to immigration officials, those very passages weren't seen as storytelling. They were seen as factual admissions. Under U.S. immigration law, specifically Section 212AE2, any non-citizen who acknowledges breaking substance regulations can be deemed ineligible to enter or remain in the country, even if those actions happened overseas or never led to formal charges. Most people wouldn't think twice about how that applies, but Harry's situation wasn't like most. He held an O1 visa, a category reserved for individuals recognized for outstanding skill in their field, whether that's entertainment, science, sports, or business. It's often granted to public figures, but the conditions behind it are strict and constantly reviewed. Holders must show ongoing professional achievement, consistent activity in their field, backing from a verified U.S. organization, and compliance with moral and legal standards as determined by immigration authorities. Back in 2020, major deals with Netflix and Spotify gave Harry and Meghan the institutional backing they needed to secure their U.S. visas. But by the end of 2025, everything had flipped. Spotify dropped the Archetypes podcast, Netflix froze nearly all upcoming productions, and their talent agency, WME, quietly stepped back, officially citing a shift in strategic priorities. Without a confirmed sponsor and with his past public admissions still hanging over him, Harry's legal footing began to collapse fast. He hadn't just lost his elite platform, he had unknowingly given officials the kind of written evidence that could be used to question his eligibility. In December 2025, Meghan's legal team made one last attempt to keep him in the US by applying to switch his O1 visa to a B2 visitor visa, a temporary option that would have allowed him to stay for up to 6 months a year, but without the ability to work or hold long-term status. Even that effort fell through. A rejection notice, later leaked to The Guardian, laid out the reasoning in blunt detail. Officials cited concerns over financial independence, ongoing legal disputes, and insufficient proof of continued exceptional activity within the past year. The letter also referenced public admissions that complicated his eligibility for visa renewal. In plain terms, no active income, no major projects, no current sponsor, and a record too tangled in public controversy. To make matters worse, Meghan reportedly couldn't qualify as Harry's financial sponsor due to tightened thresholds and her own business uncertainties at the time. Even though Meghan's American citizenship offered some flexibility, the couple's growing financial issues painted a very different picture. Reports pointed to over $12.5 million in contract repayment claims from Netflix, and an additional $3.6 million reportedly owed to Tyler Perry for security and services. Clear signs of major financial strain. As the deportation timeline picked up speed, Harry's legal team scrambled to explore options overseas. Canada declined to offer an expedited residency pathway. Argentina and Portugal were said to have turned down informal approaches. Even a quiet request sent to Botswana's immigration office, based on Harry's long personal connection to the country, received no official response. And back in the UK, the Home Office itself wasn't guaranteeing an easy entry either. Leaked notes connected to Operation Irongate suggested that Harry and William worked together to make sure Harry wouldn't receive any kind of royal exceptions when he returned. Both Washington and London seemed to echo the same message: "You are not special anymore." There was no royal send-off, no pomp or pageantry. The gates of the Montecito mansion didn't close with ceremony. They simply opened one last time for Harry to step through, escorted under official supervision, stripped of title and status, leaving California behind for good. At exactly 2:42 p.m. on January 26, 2026, a single white envelope was taped to the security booth outside their former estate. It carried the seal of First Republic Bank, now under J.P. Morgan Chase, and symbolized the end of an era. It wasn't a warning, it was official. That white envelope wasn't symbolic or a bluff. It was a formal foreclosure notice, legally authorizing the bank to reclaim the property. The Montecito estate, originally purchased in July 2020 for $14.65 million, hadn't received a mortgage payment since September 2025, according to recently unsealed court filings in Santa Barbara County. Even with early support from private backers, including Tyler Perry, who reportedly covered more than $3.6 million in private security and housing costs, the mounting financial strain became impossible to hide. For Meghan, the unraveling had already begun weeks before. While Harry fought to resolve his immigration issues, she was quietly meeting with her legal and PR advisors in Los Angeles, trying to protect what was left. By January 20th, Her lifestyle brand, American Riviera Orchard, had been formally re-registered under her name alone, a move that separated her business from their shared ventures. Joint accounts were reportedly frozen, and representation through WME was quietly restructured behind the scenes. Insiders said Meghan was encouraged to secure remaining assets and distance herself from any financial or legal fallout tied to Harry's pending federal case. Harry didn't realize what that meant until the reality hit. He was packing his own belongings, alone, in the same mansion that once symbolized their freedom. On the night of January 24th, what became the couple's final evening under the same roof unfolded with quiet tension. According to someone close to the Sussex circle, Harry walked into the master bedroom carrying one rolling suitcase, 2 duffel bags, and an expression of disbelief. "We need to go tonight. They're not just pulling the visa, they're reclaiming the house. JP Morgan isn't bluffing." Meghan, however, was composed and distant, standing by the window as helicopters circled above their Montecito home. The calm in her voice was almost chilling as she replied, "You have to leave. I'm staying for the children, for the brand, for the future." She mentioned Archie and Lilibet's schooling, their American citizenship, and her upcoming business launch, framing her decision as one of practicality, not emotion. In that moment, the image of unity that once defined them shattered completely. The partnership that had once stood against royal tradition dissolved, not through anger or conflict, but through quiet, calculated separation. That same evening, Harry made a last-ditch attempt to transfer part of the property ownership to Meghan in hopes to protect it, but the legal system was already several steps ahead. Filings blocked the change immediately. The estate had already been flagged for pre-seizure review by the bank. By the next morning, at precisely 8:06 a.m., officials from the Department of Homeland Security arrived with the final notice in hand. Harry was given 24 hours to vacate the property and comply with the removal directive. What came next wasn't so much an exile as it was a complete logistical breakdown. With no private jet, no diplomatic protection, and no remaining allies in Washington, Harry was handed a standard one-way commercial ticket, British Airways flight BA-268, departing Los Angeles on January 26th at 7:10 p.m. Eyewitnesses at LAX described a sight no one ever expected. Harry arriving in a rented black SUV, unshaven, dressed in a gray hoodie and baseball cap. He carried just one suitcase, no staff, no entourage, no royal treatment. He stood quietly in the TSA line, removed his shoes, and declared no special items. There was no fast-track access, no private lounge waiting for him this time. Phones came out instantly, cameras clicked, live streams began. Someone whispered, "That's the prince," and another replied softly, "Not anymore." The moment was raw, surreal, and painfully human. He boarded first class alone, a man once at the center of global headlines, now traveling like any other passenger heading home with heavy thoughts and unfinished chapters. While Harry was somewhere over the Atlantic, Buckingham Palace was finalizing its official statement. It would go live at 8 a.m. GMT on January 28th, precise, cold, and stripped of sentiment. According to insiders, both Princess Anne and Prince William personally reviewed the final version before release to ensure every word was exact. The phrasing left no room for interpretation. This is not a family reunion. It is the legal consequence of his actions. There was no comforting tone, no ceremonial welcome, just a firm declaration that his return wasn't a celebration. Operation Irongate had reached its final stage, the moment everything became official. The lease for Frogmore Cottage had been terminated, royal security clearance fully revoked, and border alert status formally activated. Harry's fingerprints, once stored under royal diplomatic protection, were now reclassified under a standard civilian file, marked for extra review due to his high public profile. Outside, the rain poured down in heavy sheets, cold and metallic, turning the tarmac at Heathrow Airport into a mirror of gray skies above. It dripped from the edges of Terminal 5's roof like a quiet warning. This was not a return met with open arms. At exactly 13:47 GMT on January 27, 2026, British Airways flight BA-268 from Los Angeles landed smoothly on runway 27L. Everything about the arrival was procedural. No diplomatic escort, no royal convoy, no blacked-out Jaguar waiting at the bottom of the stairs. Because this time, Prince Harry wasn't coming home as a royal figure. He was entering the United Kingdom as a private citizen under standard immigration protocol, according to an updated Home Office advisory under Operation Irongate. As passengers began to leave the plane, Harry stayed in his seat until the cabin was almost empty. He had no team, no photographers, no staff, just a single carry-on bag and the quiet echo of a life that once commanded global attention. Gone was the HRG, gone was the diplomatic passport. All that remained was a man walking down a rain-slicked jet bridge, returning not to privilege, but to paperwork, process, and a country that now saw him as one of its own, but no longer one of its own kind. He was no longer Prince Harry, Duke of Sussex. On official records, he was simply Henry Charles Albert David, born 15 September 1984, London, England. Nothing more, nothing less. As he stepped through immigration, everything appeared routine, until his name triggered a flashing yellow alert on the border system. A junior officer, clearly briefed, quietly called over a supervisor. Moments later, Harry was escorted to a small side room, the kind usually reserved for minor paperwork reviews. There was no confrontation, no harsh words, just procedure. Forms were verified, documents scanned, and he was told to wait. Then came the defining moment. The customs declaration. No special privileges, no immunity, no exemptions. It was official. He was no longer a royal traveler. He was just Harry, subject to the same rules as everyone else. Outside the terminal, chaos was already brewing. Reporters packed themselves behind barriers, cameras flashing through the drizzle. Within minutes, the Daily Mail pushed out an alert. Exclusive. Harry lands in London after U.S. immigration exit. Crowds started gathering fast, pressing against the gates as police formed a perimeter to control the growing frenzy. But there was no royal transport waiting, no security convoy, no discreet car from the palace. For the first time in his life, Harry stood on British soil without any official support, holding his own luggage, rain streaking down the glass doors, the world watching. He wasn't calling an aide, he wasn't calling a lawyer, he was calling his father. At 13:58 GMT, inside Clarence House, a leather-bound phone buzzed atop a carved mahogany desk. The screen displayed one name, Harry. Private line. King Charles sat in his study surrounded by shelves filled with family portraits and decades of royal history. In front of him was the unmistakable sign of a son in distress. His hand hovered over the green button, frozen between instinct and responsibility. For a moment, he wasn't a monarch, he was just a father. The voice inside whispered, "Answer him," but another, colder one reminded him, "You must stay firm." Then, from the dim light of the room, another figure stepped forward, Prince William. His expression was hard, his tone controlled but sharp. "Don't," he said quietly. Charles's voice cracked slightly as he replied, "He's in serious trouble." William didn't flinch. "He made it our trouble, and now it's his," he said firmly. "He's still your son, yes, but he's also the one who walked away. He traded our legacy for attention, and now he's facing what comes with it." The king's eyes remained fixed on the phone. It kept ringing, and then it stopped. The line went to voicemail. The line went silent. In that moment, another symbolic door closed within the royal circle. For months, whispers of Operation Irongate had drifted through the palace, a plan few understood in full. By January 2026, it was no longer a theory. It was active, deliberate, and irreversible. Created under the joint direction of Prince William and Princess Anne, Operation Irongate wasn't aimed at a foreign threat. It was designed to manage a royal crisis from within. It marked a turning point in palace history, a defensive strategy to protect the institution not from outsiders, but from one of its own. The plan was detailed and deliberate. Its first move, the formal termination of the Frogmore Cottage lease on January 15th. The locks were changed, and Windsor's internal security system was updated to block Harry's access under every condition. No royal exceptions, no overrides, no backdoor clearance codes. Next came the border directive. UK authorities were instructed to process Harry's passport under standard entry procedures only, stripping away all diplomatic shortcuts or privileged screening. His arrival was to be treated exactly like that of any other private citizen who carried a complex legal record, not as a returning royal family member. Then there were the security protocols. The Royal Protection Service received explicit orders not to reactivate his security detail. All emergency access codes and prior authorizations linked to Harry were fully revoked. Even Clarence House, the residence of his father, King Charles, was temporarily upgraded to Level 2 lockdown during Harry's re-entry window to ensure absolute control and containment. Operation Irongate had one clear message: the royal household would no longer bend for emotion or legacy. A total communications blackout was ordered. No royal statements, no comments, no leaks to the press until Harry's physical arrival on UK soil was officially confirmed. The mission wasn't about greeting him, it was about managing and containing the situation with absolute control. For Harry, the silence spoke louder than words. Every path that once led him home was now closed. Scotland Yard, no longer an ally. Private accommodations in Windsor, locked and off-limits. Highgrove House, unreachable. Even close friends who had once defended him had gone quiet. Those within the palace who once saw him as the spirited younger royal now viewed him as a sensitive liability, someone too unpredictable to protect. And Meghan? She didn't answer his calls that day. Instead, her publicist released a carefully worded statement. No mention of the immigration ordeal, no reference to Harry's situation, just a reaffirmation of her focus on her business and her children's well-being in the United States. So, as the black cab he'd hailed pulled onto the M4, Harry sat by the window, watching the endless blur of gray highway stretch into the horizon. The country that had once been his birthright now felt more like a fortress, closed off, guarded, and cold. By the morning of January 28, 2026, London's winter air hadn't softened, but the media storm had ignited. In the buzzing newsrooms of Fleet Street, phones rang non-stop. Editors barked orders, and headlines were already drafted with ruthless precision. Now Harry was facing the full weight of his past. Every headline, every controversy, every decision he once thought was behind him. The morning papers screened in giant type, "Prince Harry alone at Heathrow." Next to the bold headline sat a photo that captured everything. Hood up, head down, walking alone through the terminal. But that image was only the beginning. What followed was a detailed dissection of his entire public image, piece by piece. Every past mistake was unearthed, reanalyzed, and repackaged for a new scandal-hungry audience. His memoir, Spare, once hailed as brave and revealing, was now treated like a confession under a microscope. What had once been praised as openness about his personal battles was now painted as instability, privilege, and emotional turmoil. Then came the resurfacing of old stories, long buried but never forgotten. The summer of 2001, when teenage Harry was caught experimenting with alcohol and cannabis, made its way back to the front pages. The news of the world reprinted the old photos and revived the official Clarence House statement from that time. Back then, it was framed as a youthful mistake followed by lessons learned. Now, it was rewritten as the beginning of a pattern, the same one that allegedly played a part in his U.S. immigration downfall. Then came 2005, an incident that had haunted him for years: the infamous costume party in Wiltshire, where Harry was photographed wearing a Nazi armband. A scandal that once passed as a tone-deaf mistake was now revived globally as proof of defiance without consequence. The image went viral again, not as a footnote in history, but as part of a narrative painting him as a man whose judgment had been questioned for decades. Within just 48 hours of Harry's return, the global media machine went into overdrive. Major outlets like Le Monde, Der Spiegel, and El País ran special features titled "The Rise and Fall of a Royal." Across social media, especially TikTok, old footage of Harry leaving London nightclubs years ago resurfaced, edited together with captions like, "And he thought he could outplay Buckingham Palace." The narrative had turned fast, and the world was watching every second of it. Inside palace walls, the situation shifted from quiet control to full-scale media management. What began as a policy of silence was now an active defense operation. According to an insider close to Kensington Palace, Prince William was reportedly furious over how the press framed the story, particularly headlines implying that the royal family had abandoned Harry. During private discussions with senior advisors, William was said to have vented his frustration. "The public needs to understand, we tried everything. I tried everything, and he used it against us." His tone, as described by those present, carried the weight of both anger and heartbreak. William's resentment ran far deeper than just media spin. It was personal. Palace aides revealed that he had pleaded with Harry not to release Spare, fearing the long-term damage it would cause to both family and institution. When the attempts to stop the book failed, and Spare hit the shelves with its portrayal of William as hot-tempered, media-obsessed, and emotionally closed off, something between the brothers shattered completely. According to palace insiders, in a private conversation with Princess Anne in late 2025, William was reportedly quoted as saying, "I was his brother and his protector. He wasn't just family. I was the one holding him together when he was falling apart, and he turned me into a villain for profit." That statement marked a turning point. Watching Harry return to Britain not as a royal, but as a global cautionary story, shifted William's focus entirely. He was no longer acting as the family's emotional anchor. He became its shield. From that point forward, his mission was clear: defend the institution at all costs. Under the coordination of Sir Clive Alderton and Princess Anne, the royal household made a deliberate choice: no defense, no denial, and no sympathy statements regarding Harry. Instead, a short internal memo was circulated to press contacts with a single, chilling phrase: "The crown does not protect those who act against it." That line began to quietly echo across royal-friendly media outlets, appearing in opinion pieces, editorials, and background briefings. It became a coded message from inside the palace. The monarchy was closing ranks. Even King Charles, usually the calm voice in family crises, stayed silent. His last known act regarding Harry had been letting his call go unanswered upon arrival at Heathrow, a detail that quickly leaked to the press, only fueling the image of a royal family united in quiet disapproval. William closed the door. Charles allowed it. Anne made sure it stayed locked. That's how one former palace aide described the final stage of Operation Irongate: decisive, quiet, and final. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, Meghan Markle's silence was as striking as any statement she could have made. Her publicist released just one carefully worded line: "The Duchess is focused on her children, her business, and her family's privacy." No mention of Harry, no acknowledgement of the ongoing legal or immigration turmoil. But her actions painted a clearer picture than any press release could. Meghan's name was nowhere to be found on any of the official filings related to Harry's visa appeals or the foreclosure proceedings in California. Her company, American Riviera Orchard, had been restructured on January 12th, registered solely under her name, removing Harry entirely as a business affiliate. Behind the scenes, her media team got to work reframing her image under a new title: Resilience Amidst Chaos. Talk show appearances were reportedly being lined up, all centered around her journey of strength and independence without Harry by her side. The shift became even more pronounced when TMZ published an insider quote from a mutual friend. She told him to fix it. He didn't, so she's moving on. By the evening of January 28th, at exactly 6 p.m. GMT, Prince Harry had quietly checked into a small rented cottage on the outskirts of Oxfordshire. He was accompanied by private security, but without any state protection or official detail. It marked a stark first in his life. No royal title to fall back on, no official residence, no steady income, no plan in motion. As Harry unpacked what little he had left, one suitcase, a laptop, and a phone overflowing with unanswered messages, reality hit hard. This wasn't just about losing a visa, it was about losing his place in the narrative that once defined him. The legend of Prince Harry, the rebel royal, the freedom seeker, the rule breaker, had finally consumed itself. What remained was no longer the global icon, but the man, standing alone in the same country he once escaped, now forced to face the consequences of burning every bridge behind him. The man once hailed as the People's Prince now walks quiet English backroads without an escort, without headlines, and without a role. In the span of just 72 hours, he had lost nearly everything: his home, his country of residence, his legal standing, his public image, and perhaps most painfully, the fragile thread of trust that once tied him to his family. Inside a small rented cottage in Oxfordshire, there's no coat of arms hanging on the wall, no royal crest on the door, just Harry, stripped of status and surrounded by silence. He isn't imprisoned, yet he isn't free. He isn't muted, yet no one's listening anymore. His phone stays quiet. The line to Clarence House stays unanswered. Frogmore stands empty, locked, sealed, erased from his reach. From global fame to total isolation, it's a fall that feels almost unreal. And now the question lingers: what comes next for the man who walked away from the crown only to find himself with nowhere left to run? If this story caught your attention, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dive breakdowns into royal truths and hidden power plays. Your support helps uncover the stories they don't want you to see. Stay tuned for what happens next.